I'm about ready to call the meeting to order and ask Bill Ratliff to call the roll, and I think we will have a quorum, but we'll know after Bill calls the roll. Can you do that, Bill?
I certainly can. I'll do it in alphabetical order. Walt Boyer?
Here.
Jack Cumming?
Here.
Jean Hurley?
Here.
Bob Nagley?
Here.
Nagel? Oh, good. Very quietly. Bob Nicholson?
Here.
Charlie Polk?
Here.
Bill Ratcliffe? Here. Jack Snyder?
Here.
And Pete Straub. I've heard nothing of Pete.
I did hear from him that he was going to be on the call, but we'll get started anyway. So we have the agenda.
Wait a minute, he's not
Jack
here.
Matheson is here.
And Ruth Walsh is here.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to look at the agenda. We've done the roll call and quorum. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes, or do we want a motion to approve the minutes of December 2nd?
Move they be approved. Walt Boyer.
Second.
Is there a second?
Seconded. Jean Hurley.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any opposed? And we go to a financial report. Jack, that's you, I believe. Jack Cummings.
Yes, I've attached to the agenda two documents received, and as now things are solid. We have some developments that we'll be discussing further on in this board meeting that may change the picture prospectively, but for right now we're in shape, and the board have received these documents showing our financial condition.
Can I have a motion to receive the financial report from the treasurer?
I move that the financial report be received and approved. Jean Hurley.
Okay. Second.
Walt Boyer, second.
All right. All in favor of receiving and approving the financial report as supporting document B, say aye.
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 And opposed. And we have an interim report from Charlie Polk on the Dues and Membership Committee.
Before we get to that, I think
all right.
We should make clear that the call is being recorded.
Yes, everybody knows that we're recording the call. And they told you when you signed on that the call was being recorded, so this is your second notice. We want you to be clear on that. There are, by the way, I got a little ahead of myself, or a little behind myself, or ahead, I'm not sure which I did, but there are two adaptations of the agenda. One is to add an item on legal affairs, and I haven't heard that Bennett's on the call yet.
Yes, sir, I'm on the call. Yes, sir.
Okay. And he's got to leave within an hour, and I want to get him in to deal with that particular aspect. And the other is that we have a substitute motion that is going to be placed in consideration of item number 6. So that doesn't change anything except just to give you the heads up that is coming. Would it be better to have Charlie go ahead with, beg your pardon?
Can I interrupt you there, Bob?
Sure.
It's actually item number 7.
All right.
It's the agreement with Leading Age you're referring to.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Numbers were never my strength. So now the question is, did it tell us about your timing so we can get you on the agenda before you have to leave?
Yes, sir. I mean, I need to leave right at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, so depending on where we are, I mean, if maybe quarter till 2, I could say if we haven't gotten to that agenda item, see if the board's open to...
All right. Well, let's go ahead with Charlie Polk and this interim report on the Dues and Membership Committee. Charlie, would you take it now?
I certainly would. Thank you very much. As most of you should know, the President appointed a committee of 5 to take a look at the dues and membership structure of NaCCRA. And in addition to the 5 members we've had, Bennett Napier has been with us most of our time, and I can tell you, and Walt Boyer has been with us representing the hierarchy of the organization. I can tell you we've had a diverse and an opinionated group on the committee, all of us with very strong feelings on what we should do. But we've agreed that we're going to do whatever the majority wants us to recommend to the board. After discussing a myriad of items, I found out kind of lately, due to my exit from the board for a while and then returning, that our immediately past president, I guess 2 removed now that Ruth is the past president again, had made some commitments to Washington State on dues, and since the committee was leaning towards due sharing at the time, I wanted to take a break and do some investigations, and I did, and I come back with my findings to the board and a recommendation for them to consider, and after a lengthy discussion, the board come up with a recommendation to the NaCCRA board that you have, which is in lieu of Dan's visit to Washington, the membership committee recommended the NaCCRA board start dues sharing with Washington State effective the date from former President Dan Seeger's visit and speech to the Washington residents, and terminate after 1 year or when this committee recommends a change for all residents that is approved by the NaCCRA board. NaCCRA is to retain $10 from individual residents, and Washington State will receive $10 from first resident in the household, and $5 from the second person in the household. That was submitted to the president on December the 14th at 2015 hours. After that, we got back to our work, and we still kept moving towards a dues sharing. And I kind of summarized where I thought we were and put out an agenda item for the 16th of January. And I can tell you, folks, when you meet once a week on a subject as controversial as the ones we've been working with, it takes it out of you. So we needed a little break, and I'm glad we got it. And next Monday we're going to start back, and our agenda item is to start work on a shared system of dues and a required number of residents in the community and our state required for shared dues. Side issues will be for partners, associations, and management to collect all dues and manage all memberships. Lifeline will be available for all residents on the NaCCRA website or by mail for a subscription of $12 per year. The community and state dues will be discontinued. We would want a bylaws change to allow resident family members and other supporters of residents to become NaCCRA members with all privileges of NaCCRA members. New state association, and these are just items for discussion now. None of this has been approved. New state associations could become a chapter of NaCCRA or form a corporation. In either case, monies will be available from NaCCRA to assist in startup. And that's just an outline of what we're going to go with. But, of course, as you know, Jack has already started working on the very most difficult part of this, and that's drafting affiliation agreements to fit the current makeup of the states. Now, hopefully, by the way, I had put out an email to all the state presidents that Walt Boyer did with, inviting them to participate in this meeting, and evidently none have desired to do so. I only heard from one, and they thought they would get a representative to do it and get back to me, and they did not ever get back to me. So that's where we stand, and I didn't want to go into all the detail on the agreements and disagreements and apple throwing and stuff like that, but it's been a great experience, and it's good to have a variety of opinions. And I have a good feeling now that the committee will come up with a majority recommendation to give the board for our meeting in Washington in March. What it'll be, I wouldn't even speculate at this time, but I do think we probably will agree on some method of dues sharing, and so I think it will have that as a part of it, but all the others, there's so many things that have got to be worked out at this point. And we have good vibes from the state of Florida on maybe if something can work out to get a big jump in membership quickly from the state of Florida because of this large numbers of members. And I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but I say we got good feelings about it. The state of Florida has invited me to make a presentation at their board meeting early February of this year, and hopefully we're far enough along that I can give them something that they can go with, and we can get a big jump right there, and hopefully that will entice other states to follow. And Mr. President, I'll be delighted to take any questions at this point.
The $12 per year lifeline is for whom?
Beg your pardon?
Who will pay the $12 per year for a lifeline?
Whoever.
Just a moment.
Whoever wants to get a hard copy can subscribe to the lifeline, and a hard copy will be mailed to them 6 times a year for $12. If they don't want to subscribe to it, they'll be able to go online and download a copy for nothing.
Does the $12 include a membership? Is that a membership fee?
They have to be a member to subscribe to it. That's correct.
So it's in addition to the $20. It would be $32 if they want the lifeline.
No, that's not correct. If we go to dues sharing, we're going to automatically drop our dues to NaCCRA to $10 and no lifeline.
But you can get it available online.
Yes.
Okay.
May I ask, will lifetime members also have to pay $12 a year?
No, right now, the committee has not addressed that, but I think probably the consensus is going to be let's leave Lifeline alone for past Lifeline and maybe look at something for future Lifelines. Members. But that's still a problem we hadn't worked on.
Yeah, well, I think we're getting ahead of the game here. It's under consideration, and I'm sure you'll have a good recommendation for us. Is there anything else, Charlie, you need to add?
I don't need to add anything, no.
All right. One thing that you lead up to is item 7 on the agenda, the fulfillment of affiliation commitment to Washington State NaCCRA, and I think for continuation or keeping the thought going, could we turn now to Jack Cummings, who has been a part of your committee and has drafted a proposed agreement between NaCCRA and Washington State that the Washington State Executive Committee looked at on Monday, and let him speak to that and where we stand on that, and see how the board senses we could we move on that. Would you take it, Jack?
I will. Let me just get to the item on the agenda. This is item number 8 on the most recent agenda, and I think right now we're waiting to hear officially from the Washington group about these. Frank Little has raised an issue because, as Charlie Polk just explained, Charlie Polk had proposed to the board that the dues sharing be retroactive to the date that Dan Seeger made the commitment to Washington that NaCCRA would adopt a dues sharing arrangement for them. The proposal that's in the agenda welcome silent participant. But anyway, the proposal that's in the agenda today is only retroactive to January 1st, 2016. So the alternative would be to make it retroactive, but we have this question of the lifeline. We would have to then collect the cost of having mailed the lifeline out to the Washington group to have it come out even, and that's something that we need to discuss with the Washington Executive Committee, and I think until we from them, we're not really prepared to act on it. The motion today is simply to make a proposal of this nature to the Washington State group for their consideration, and then we would await until we get their reaction and we are able to adapt it to whatever concerns they might raise, or however, in other words, the details would be worked out in discussion with them, and then it would come back to the next teleconference to be for approval, if we can move it that quickly, retroactive to whatever date is determined in those discussions.
Jack, let me interrupt to say that the president of NaCCRA Washington is on the conference call, and the NaCCRA Washington Executive Committee looked at your proposal and approved it in principle with an amendment that for the year 2015, the NaCCRA board be asked for a startup grant of $2,000 so that it would be your motion before. So and Helmut Goldie can speak to this, but as I understand it, the motion would be what's on the table now and adding in retroactive to 2015 a $2,000 startup grant. So Helmut, could I call on you to speak to this, please?
Yes, thank you, Bob. I'll be happy to talk about this. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon for you. The Executive Committee discussed at length the proposed language that's in Jack Cummings' draft and authorized me as current president or my successor to be elected in a month or so, and our treasurer to discuss the detailed modifications that are necessary to get a real document going, to discuss this with Jack and Bob Nicholson and anybody else your board designates to come to a mutually agreeable wording. There are some numbering problems in the current document. There's no mentioning about the what happens to the life membership dues, and as was just pointed out, there may be some issues with the lifeline issue as well. So that's where we are. So as far as I am concerned and our executive committee is concerned, we have approved the idea in principle with details to be worked out in mutually agreeable negotiations in the not-too-distant future.
Okay. Could we turn back, Jack, to your motion? Could we put your motion that we approve the draft agreement in principle, meaning the 10-10 share with Lifeline being shared electronically, and a $2,000 startup grant for 2015.
The $2,000 startup government Salmut again would be in addition to what's in the document right now.
That's right.
I think that the motion that's before the board today allows for all of that. Those
all right.
specifics that will be worked out as Helmut
all right.
I'd rather call it discussions than negotiations, because I think we're all
okay. Yes.
family. But the motion reads, after due deliberation and in support of the integrity of NaCCRA, the board authorizes the president to offer the draft affiliation agreement to NaCCRA Washington and to enter into any negotiations that may ensue. The word here is in the written thing, it says ensure. It should be ensue. I think Microsoft probably helped us there. Concerning the specifics of the terms and phrasing in the agreement. Depending on the response of the NaCCRA Washington governing board, is expected agreement can be confirmed at the next NaCCRA board teleconference, effective retroactively. So I think that motion still...
Well, it covers it. It covers it then. So I then would like to put the motion to the body for a vote, and then after the vote, be sure to name...
Does the motion... I guess I'm making the motion. Does the motion have a second?
Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second the motion, Gene Hurley.
All right. Okay. After the motion, then we will, I guess I can name, I'm getting ready to tell you what we're going to do next, so you know.
We'll take the vote first.
All right. All in favor say aye.
I have some questions on it, if possible. Charlie Paul.
Well, no, you ought to ask questions. Let's stand by for Charlie's question.
We about 14 or 15 years ago, we had a situation to arrive, and Bob Nagy can probably help me with this, where all of the state associations wanted to become an affiliate under NaCCRA and use its 501c3 posture in doing that. As a result of that, I had national IRS, to put together a package of what the local affiliates would have to do and what the NaCCRA organization would have to do to make this legal and possible under our IRS laws at that time. Basically, what had to happen, that the treasurer of NaCCRA had to handle all money. All money had to be the responsibility of the NaCCRA board. And when we started getting into that, then the states started dropping out. They didn't want to do that. They'd rather have their own charter and not be an affiliate. I hope we have not misled Washington or any other state on that IRS situation on the 501c3. And someone needs to get IRS, and they'll do this for you, put together a package on what's required under current law for the affiliate to do and what's required of NaCCRA to do in order to comply. And one reason I mentioned this, it was some of the emails I've seen recently was that Washington residents could still make donations to NaCCRA for a tax deduction, and NaCCRA could send the money back to the state to use it in the state. Unless the IRS laws have changed since this occurred 15 years ago, that's not a possible thing to do. So this needs really looking into before we go too far with the wrong information.
Okay, Charlie, Bob, if I may, this is...
Yes, go ahead.
I think that's an interesting point, and it goes to what Bennett is going to talk about in the legal area. It is an aspect that enters into it. I don't think it would detract from the board's action on the motion as presented today. It's something that needs to be worked out in the course of discussions and as we move forward. And Bennett is already working on that, as he's going to tell you when we give the floor to him.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to focus on the motion now, and then go to Charlie's concern and let Bennett speak to it.
Hello.
Hello. Anyway, I'd like to focus on the motion and take Charlie's concern and speak to that when we call on Bennett. I think Helmut can tell you that there is sentiment in Washington State to become independent and become a separate 501c3. Helmut, would you speak to that?
Yes, there are some people who would prefer that Washington State organizes as a separate 501c3 or 3-4, like Illinois did, but that is not an active pursuit at the present time. I personally, and that's my personal feeling, I'm not very much in favor of it. I like the idea that we, Washington State, remain a chapter or affiliate under the 501c3 of NaCCRA National. But our board may consider it differently in the future. But at the moment, there's no change with our posture.
All right. Thank you very much, Helmut. Let's go now to the motion.
Mr. President, if I could make one more point.
Yeah, all right.
If it would be beneficial to you and the board for my committee, since Jack is deeply involved in this and a member of the committee, we could address this starting January the 16th and stick with it until we get it finished, because it's got to be a lot of questions have got to be answered before we go forward with every state. The board could go to work on this and come to you with a recommendation if that would help out.
All right. I would suggest that we ask the Membership and Dues Committee to include in their charter looking at the 501c3 status being shared with emerging state associations. Can we just do that by common consent?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think it relates to this particular vote. I think I think you can go ahead and vote on this if you want.
That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. Okay, all in favor of this motion that Jack has made, say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion is carried with no negative votes, and the president, it's hard to say that after 66 days, will appoint Jack Cummings to work with Helmut Goldie and with Stephanie Chamberlain, the treasurer of NaCCRA Washington, and have Bennett in on the conversation so that we have all the parties at the table, and they will have to work on that as soon as possible, because there's a need in the state of Washington to have some kind of income flow soon. So let's go to the next one. Let's go to Bennett
before
now.
we leave this is Jane Hurley. Could I just ask you a question? Was Lifeline mailed to the people to the individuals in Washington State? The November, December Lifeline. It was mailed to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Bennett, would you step up, please? And this is, I don't know, this got printed out, but start with the 501c3 you've been talking about, and then go through the 2 or 3 legal issues that we need to be looking at.
Sure. I'll bring up an item of new business, and I'll just give some background information, and then the board should choose to make a motion to actually take some action relative to the item or items. And so some background information is a member in good standing of NaCCRA has requested the NaCCRA board to expend funds for the purpose of a legal analysis of specific activities. And so we're going to present several of those items for consideration to the board. These items include review of originally NaCCRA was registered as a not-for-profit corporation in the state of Maryland, where we had a former president of the organization resided and was the registered agent. Subsequently, that person passed away, and who was a resident and a volunteer. As more administrative functions were performed in the state of Florida, we moved the state registration to the state of Florida for the NaCCRA as a not-for-profit. This member's requested an analysis of that process to ensure all of the things were done as required between the two states. Second, there's a request for some research to be done relative to state laws and NaCCRA's compliance with state solicitation laws. And so some background on that for the board, and we've obviously got some observers as well on the call today, is many states have a charitable solicitation law in the state statutes. Most of them have a reference that membership dues or the collection of membership dues are not defined as charitable solicitations. However, each state is different. And so this member's requested an analysis again to ensure that there's proper compliance with those regulations. If the board is agreeable to expending some funds with an outside attorney, and outside meaning not affiliated with NaCCRA or any of the, in this case you've got one for-profit provider that provides administrative services to NaCCRA, being Partners in Association Management. We do have an in-house attorney on our staff, but it's requested that it be an outside licensed attorney. If the board agrees to expend funds for this purpose, we also, in that case, would recommend consideration for the for the outside counsel to look at NaCCRA's existing bylaws to review and determine the authority the board of directors has to act on policy matters, just as a matter of good due diligence, given some of the discussions of the last 5 to 6 months relative to different policy matters. And so that's the background information, Mr. President, that we would bring to the board for consideration to consider, and then ultimately the board could make a determination if you choose to do that and any amount of money that you would be willing to expend. What we can share is the executive committee has identified, if the board so deems it appropriate, an outside licensed attorney with background in not-for-profit and association law that could help perform this work.
You want to find one attorney who will investigate all of these 4 items that you just listed?
It's effectively 3 items, but some are interrelated.
Yeah. Senator Walt Boyer, my personal reaction to what you said is that the issue on the bylaws and whether or not the board has the authority that it has assumed, I think, should be looked at by an outside attorney. But the other items that you discussed, I think, could just as well be handled fairly by your attorney internally. Do you have a comment on that?
I have a comment. What we can share is the issue relative to solicitation laws. To my knowledge, at this stage, the specific request was related to 2 specific states, Washington State and Massachusetts. The licensed attorney that's employed by Partners in Association Management, which is a service provider to NaCCRA, did look at both of those state statutes and determined that, membership dues are not defined as solicitations as it relates to those state solicitation laws, and therefore NaCCRA doesn't have to register as a solicitor, if you will, under those state laws. We shared that information with this member in good standing. They're effectively, I'm not speaking for them, but just kind of sharing the feedback, is they still are concerned that it's not coming from an outside disinterested party. And so that's why we're continuing to bring it back to the board. In terms of the dissolution from Maryland and subsequent registration with the state of Florida, again, the same premise applies as the member in good standing would want a disinterested licensed attorney to render that opinion rather than somebody that has some indirect or direct affiliation with NaCCRA itself.
I see. All right. Thank you very much.
And what are we concerned about regarding nonprofits? Who's concerned about? What's being looked into with this regard? And why?
That's Ms. Hurley. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. I tried to state it fairly clearly. I can restate it. If you want the 3 items that the attorney would potentially look at, is that what you need? Correct?
No, I'm just wondering why we're, if you're going to hire an attorney,
right,
then you've got a problem. What's our problem?
It's not determined whether there is a problem or not. The question is to determine if NaCCRA is in full compliance to ensure its continued status as a 501c3 tax-exempt organization. So, to some extent, again, I'm not speaking for the member, but, trying to paraphrase the intent is, because each state has different not-for-profit laws that govern activity, the member feels it's important to have those actions that have been taken, or have already taken place, if you will, or are continuing to take place in terms of solicitation, that we're ensuring an outside licensed attorney has signed off on our current activities.
I don't see any reason to hire an attorney unless you've got a problem. I just am opposed to doing that. I don't think we have the money, and I don't think we need it.
No, we don't have the money. I've seen a quote that to do these 3 items would cost in the neighborhood of $16,000, which would be more than a quarter of our budget. My recommendation as president is that we accept the solicitation opinion of the attorney, which is contracted with partners in answering the solicitation, and that our answer be that we do not feel we need an outside attorney. And secondly, that on the matter of the bylaws, I think we need to get an opinion on the bylaws. Our bylaws are in transition. My suggestion is we table the bylaws till we get some bylaws that somebody could look at independently as to what needs to be done. Jack Cummings had a thought, or they shared with me about to authorize some outside attorney. Would you pick up the ball, Jack, on that?
I was concerned with the redomestication issue to make sure that we were in full compliance with the IRS requirements there, and so I suggested that we authorize just to ensure that that piece is properly in place and that we're not out of compliance with the IRS. I've subsequently had some information from Bennett that assures me that it was handled in an appropriate way. So there's a question whether that's needed. So I think the direction that you're going in, what you just were saying, is making sense to me right now as I listen to it.
Me too. Yeah. let's go along with Bob Nicholson's resolution of this discussion.
Mr. President, I obviously don't have a vote, but I do. Whether this board addresses it now or later, I do feel, quite frankly, that the board should authorize an expenditure of some amount. You determine what that amount is, to have at least certain elements of these topics reviewed by an outside attorney. I think this board will continue to be discussing this matter until such time you authorize some expenditure of funds for that purpose. That's my formal.
Well then, Jack, could you make your motion? Could you make your motion about an expenditure of funds not to exceed, so that Bennett could explore getting some preliminary input from attorneys on these three matters?
So, based on the recommendation from our professionals, I recommend that we authorize an expenditure up to $2,000 for the purpose of legal expenditure on these matters, with the whole thing to be reviewed at the next board teleconference.
All right. Is there a second?
Walt Boyer.
Say again.
It's Walt
Boyer. You were breaking up, but Walter, you seconding?
Yes, I am.
Seconding. All right. Thank you. All in favor?
No, wait a minute. Before we vote, I have to say that I'm dead opposed to any kind of expenditures until we decide that we need an attorney. We don't need to authorize any amount of expenditures. Nothing.
Mr. President, Charlie Falk.
Yeah, Charlie.
Do you have a NaCCRA attorney working pro bono for NaCCRA right now?
We do not.
When I was president, I had one that would give me 40 hours a year, and the most I ever used was 20, and I found it to be extremely easy to get an attorney that would do that, because I discovered that all attorneys I don't know where it's required or they were required of themselves to do so much free work a year. And Milt Brummer, who was an attorney before I was, and Art Burrell, who was an attorney in Massachusetts, president in Massachusetts immediately before I was, both of them had attorneys doing pro bono work for them. And you might, in the large city where you live, you might could get one to do some pro bono for NaCCRA with a couple of phone calls.
Okay, I don't think that prevents the motion of saying that I think the question is, if needed, we authorize an expenditure, and that would provide for getting a pro bono attorney to help us.
Yeah, I don't see where we need an expenditure right now. I don't really know what the problem is right now.
I agree with Charlie 100%. We do not need any expenditure right now. Let's vote that down.
Okay, help me out, Jack. Can we say that we're taking action and we'll seek a pro bono attorney to help us with these matters?
Been made and seconded. It may get voted down. Let's vote on it.
Okay, all right, let's vote on it.
Mr. President, before the vote's taken, just for purposes of recording of the minutes, I just want to make clear that, again, we don't know what the vote outcome is, but should there be any activity by a licensed attorney, whether that's paid for or pro bono, that the analysis would come to the board and not the partners or myself, just because the board would be the one asking for the conduct of the activity. Just want that clear.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bennett.
Keep that into the motion. But I think the motion held that the report was to come to the next teleconference. So I think that's covered.
The motion reads up to 2,000, so there may be no need to spend any of that up to 2,000.
I don't want to authorize the expenditures of any of NaCCRA funds for legal advice. Not even $2.
Okay, well, we have a...
you got a motion on the floor.
Got a motion, so I'm going to call the question, and let's vote. We're going to vote. We're going to vote on the motion to authorize up to $2,000 to get legal help. All in favor say aye.
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 And opposed?
No.
Aye.
All right, let's have a roll call, Bill.
Okay, I'm going down the list. Walt Boyer,
Aye.
Jack Cumming,
Aye.
Jean Hurley,
No.
Rob Nagel,
No.
Rob Nicholson,
Abstain as the moderator.
Have to. If you can't vote.
Charlie Polk,
Nay.
me, yay, Jack Snyder,
Hey.
sorry,
No.
did you say,
No.
oh,
I said nay, but no.
sorry, and Pete Starr's not here. Do you count as a voting member on this, Ruth?
No, I do not. I am not.
Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 for the motion, 1, 2, 3, 4 against.
Repeat that, Bill.
1, 2, 3 votes for the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4 votes against the motion.
All right. The motion fails, and the impetus now is to work toward a pro bono attorney because the issues are still before us. And with that understanding, we are going to move forward to the next item. And because my agenda's got different numbers on them, are we at the item?
Item 5, which is the confusion, which was added, is a report from you on the leading age relationship.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm trying to find that on my agenda here. What was the old number?
It wasn't in the
Here.
old agenda. That's why I sent a new agenda.
Okay. The item, though, is
Number 5.
a consideration. The cooperative agreement with leading. Is that what is before us?
Yes.
And the motion is a substitute motion that we have before us that was Jean Hurley's.
No, you're jumping ahead, Bob.
No, you're getting
It's
ahead.
purely for you to give an update on what the relationship with leading age
All right.
is.
All right. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. So Katie Sloan is the new president and CEO, and on her second day on the job, Tuesday, I spent about an hour with her on the phone. She was very much appreciative of the call and very eager to work with us. The tone was cooperative and wanted to extend every help to us, NaCCRA. And I asked sort of in a, how would it be to get started? And I proposed that we have Steve Magg and Jack Cummings, one from each organization, do some groundwork for a joint task group. And she proposed 4 people from Leading Age, herself, Steve Magg, a state president, and one other from their board, to be with the 4 of us from NaCCRA, president liaison Jack Bennett, who's been a part of the formal negotiations, and one other, to come together and using the groundwork in preparation that Jack and Steve would do, identify those issues that were not in the original agreement that need to be there, such as the participation of NaCCRA in providing an educational seminar at the annual meeting, providing Leading Age providing speakers to NaCCRA, mutual work on membership development for NaCCRA, and trying to clarify the confusion that was created by NaCCRA in talking about the intermingling of boards, which was not in the agreement initially either, but how do we link the boards together that's acceptable to each board, those kind of things, to have Jack and Steve do the groundwork, identify those issues clearly, and then have the joint task group meet and try to come to some resolution of what would look like a final product, and then that final product would go back to each of our boards. So that's pretty much what came about on. In fact, it was just yesterday. Now that I think about it, and then I sent to each of the board members a copy of Katie Sloan's emails from her point of view, summarizing what we talked about, because I said it's always good when I'm talking to someone, now what did you hear I say, what did you think I said, so that we're on the same page. So that's the update that is item number 5 that I lost in my confusion. Any questions?
Yeah, very positive.
Frank Little leaving the degree.
Questions. We're going to move on. That's for your information.
So can we expect this to be on the agenda for the February board meeting?
Well, I think by means of today,
Frank Little leaving the meeting.
Stand by. My doorbell's ringing. It always rings. By means of this report, I'm suggesting that, I'm naming Jack Cummings as our liaison to meet with Steve Magg, and that we accept Leading Age's idea of a joint task group, and that we will, name 4 people to work with them.
But we haven't named the 4 people yet.
No, we haven't, because this is only 24 hours old. But I think there's some obvious, people that we've got to name that, benefit on the thing.
So you expect to be on the task force, Bob?
One of the 4
people?
On shaping the agreement, yes.
So we know now that it's at least 2 of you and Jack Cummings will be speaking for NaCCRA.
And I also thought that Walt Boyer, who's been on the negotiations from the start, we need some continuity, because there were some things agreed upon verbally that didn't get in the agreement.
So that's 4 people.
I mentioned 2 or 3 of them. But what I want to do is get Jack and Steve working immediately until Leading Age we're ready to step forward and work with them along this line.
All right. So Jack and Steve are going to start by getting together.
Right.
And getting something started. Okay.
Are there any questions?
All right. Add that you've talked about mechanics. The whole purpose of the mechanics is to identify issues where providers' view differs from that of residents, and to begin to really get some protections that residents need in place. That's what the aim is. And I think we need to keep that clearly on the radar. This is not come by, we're all friends.
Right.
is going to be an effort for residents the protections that they need and deserve and that they expected when they signed their contracts.
And I think that's exactly what we hope you will do with Steve in identifying issues so that as we get together, they will be clearly before both groups.
Exactly. This is Ruth, and I have to get off the phone, but I'm in accord. And good luck, and I'll talk to you later, but I have to bring off.
Okay. This is a progress report. What I'd like to do now is to move to the substitute motion for the item which was on my agenda, the consideration of a decision with the cooperative agreement with Leading Age, and Gene Hurley worked out some wording for that, so that in place of the longer motion, the board affirms its belief, et cetera, et cetera. We have. Do you want to make that, or Jack? Do you want to make that motion?
It's Gene's wording with a minor modification. The most recent one that we've discussed was the motion would be the board affirms its belief that NaCCRA can better advance its mission by working with the provider organization Leading Age than it can otherwise.
All right. And that's a substitute motion for what on my agenda is item number 6. And we have Ginger Clifford. We granted 3 minutes to speak to this. And Ginger, are you there?
Hello, Ginger. Oh, she's apparently not.
Yes. Can you hear me?
There you are.
Okay.
Yeah, we thought you got lost in the hills of North Carolina. Anyway, so your 3 minutes is on to the motion. But I got ahead of myself. Walt is going to introduce Ginger so people will know who's talking to us. Go ahead, Walt.
I'll tell you a little bit about Ginger. Ginger Clifford is a member of the North Carolina Residents Association Board of Directors. She represents the Carroll Woods CCRC residents in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. She's just completed a term as the co-chair of North Carolina's Eastern Region. She remains a strong voice in North Carolina's resident affairs. And right now she's speaking for a group of residents at Carroll Woods who are opposed to an affiliation with Leading Age. So with that, I introduced Ginger Clifford.
Okay, Ginger, you're on. My egg timer has started.
Well, I want to clarify something before you start your egg timer. I'm not on the board of directors of NaCCRA currently. I was when I was the regional co-chair. But we appreciate getting to talk for these 3 minutes. And I would request that the remarks be read into the minutes. I'll send a hard copy to you immediately following this teleconference. Now I'll start my 3 minutes. We realize how much of your time and energy many of you have given to NaCCRA, and we also realize that you want what we want, an association that provides a strong voice for CCRA residents. You've stated that the written agreement will ensure that Leading Age will listen to you. Leading Age may agree in writing to meet with you, but you can't make someone listen. In order to be heard, NaCCRA has to be someone that Leading Age wishes to hear from, because you bring something to the negotiating table. You do this by, number 1, actively involving NaCCRA members in the important issues and work of the board, not by signing an agreement with no membership involvement and support. Number 2, by increasing membership so that our numbers are large enough to carry some weight when differences of opinion arise. And from what we've heard, Bennett Napier might be able to help us with this. Not by signing an agreement that prompts 4 board members to resign and has the potential to polarize the membership base that you represent. And number 3, by having a strong set of bylaws that promote the mission and interests of NaCCRA and its members, not by signing an agreement that is not supported by the NaCCRA bylaws. And lastly, number 4, by increasing interest in NaCCRA in general, by offering more assistance to states that have weak or non-existent laws that protect CCRA residents, sending informational articles to state CCRA newsletters on a regular basis, and by establishing a legislative committee, not by signing an agreement with the deadline set by leading age with the threat that perks will be taken away, and not by accepting perks in the first place from an association that you want to influence, not by signing an agreement with numerous unknowns, including a protocol to settle disagreements, that the other party has yet to sign 3 months later. It's not too late for NaCCRA to change course. You can cite all of the reasons we've provided, noting that without strong member support, NaCCRA cannot be an effective association. You can strongly express your desire to continue working with Leading Age. If Leading Age will not talk to you currently, then something is wrong, and we need to figure out what that is. If you go forward with a written agreement, then down the road the terms of the agreement will change. At some point you will not agree on what should be in the agreement, or you may want out of the agreement entirely. This is when Leading Age can blame you for terminating the agreement, and they could feel justified in cutting off communication. When it is in the resident's best interest, you can support Leading Age now, and you do not need a written agreement to do it. When Leading Age is supporting an issue that is not in the resident's best interest, NaCCRA needs to position itself to effectively express itself, and a written agreement will make this more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginger. David Curtis, the president of the Illinois Resident Association, had asked for 3 minutes. Is David on the call?
Yes, I am.
Would you now let me give you your 3 minutes, please, to speak to the motion that's before us, that the board affirms its belief that NaCCRA can better advance its mission by working with the provider organizations, Leading Age, than it can otherwise. Jack Stater is a member of our board and is going to introduce who David Curtis really is.
Okay, David is the founding president of ILCRA. He's lived at Monarch for a year and a half with his wife, Jean, of 50 years. He has a great deal of experience in leadership, being a university professor and a provost for over 40 years, and he's the leadership behind ILCRA in Illinois.
Thank you, David. You're on, and my timer's on.
Very good. Well, I'm tempted to say that after your conversation with Katie Sloan that there's really no reason for me to say much, because what you two ended up doing was exactly what I was going to propose. But inasmuch as the North Carolina individual has made a statement, I will go ahead and say at least some of what I was going to say, and I'll squiggle around some of the edges that I think have been already covered by you in your conversation with Katie. Those are going to be a little rougher than I intended it to be, but start the clock now, if you would, inasmuch as I had a significant curve thrown. I'll say that the controversy thus far has been one of two parts, one procedural and the other substantive. I'd like to deal first with the most substantive part of the issue. And I'll say at the outset that I do favor an agreement with Leading Age in which we commit to working together when we can and having a member from each organization sit on the other's board. That seems very reasonable and sensible to me. I'll say this with the full understanding, I'll say what I just said with the full understanding that while our most public goals of the two organizations are very similar, that is to provide for the well-being of CCRC residents, each organization, in fact, represents and speaks for different constituencies. There is, therefore, an innate tension and potential friction between NaCCRA and Leading Age, and I think that was what was just spoken to. Everyone involved in this process is aware of the tension, and even so, we have much to gain by increased communication and working together when we can. Of course, the language of such an agreement must be flexible enough to allow each organization to advocate openly and clearly in the interest of those that it most fundamentally represents. now to the procedural issues, and I think that has basically been taken care of. I was going to say that as a practical matter, there is in fact no agreement at this time. And in fact, I'm not going to go ahead with what I was going to say because I was going to propose that we end up exactly, Bob, where you and Katie have agreed to be. I think that open communication, sharing each other's motivations, intentions with each other can only be helpful to both organizations. And if and when we should ever find out that the relationship is not as productive as we thought that it was going to be, and in fact proves to be counterproductive, then we can easily say, we tried it didn't work, thanks for the memories, and go our separate directions. In the interim, I think we should make every effort possible to work together in numerous issues that, in fact, we have mutual concerns and interests in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Okay, other members of the board want to speak to this motion that Jack has put to us using Gene Hurley's language.
Mr. President, Charlie Falk, I'd like to speak to it.
All right.
Starting in 2002, when I become involved in NaCCRA, I've become keenly aware of Leading Age and Larry Minix, the president of Leading Age. And from that day up until about 4 years ago, I was on 2 panels at the Leading Age annual meetings. I spoke to the entire assembly of Leading Age at one meeting. I served on the House of Delegates for 6 years and on the Public Policy Forum for 4 years. I was a member of the Quality First Committee of Leading Age. And all this time, I kept asking Larry, why can't we form a written partnership or a written affiliation agreement or a written something? And he kept telling me that there has been too much dissension between residents and providers, and I've been using you as a tool to show providers that should not exist. In fact, I didn't know it until sometime later, but when Ann Bird Sisson, who was the CEO of Leading Age California, invited me out to speak to her annual meeting one year, that it was at Larry Minix's prompting to do that. At that time, and I guess still there's a lot of sentiment bad-wise between residents and providers and lack of trust and lack of communications there, and that also exists in a lot of the states. But Larry kept telling me the time wasn't right, the time wasn't right, the time wasn't right. And then Ruth come along, and then he had a series of presidents that was willing to work with him. Myself, and I was followed by Jack Masterson, who went immediately on to the House of Delegates and participated and was a good NaCCRA representative. Then Ruth come along, and Ruth started the boost at Leading Age, and Larry liked that. And lo and behold, when I left the board, I don't know where I left the board or what I left, but anyway, when we had a meeting in my home state of Florida, Larry Minix showed up, and during his talk to the residence president, he out loud said for the first time, it is time for Leading Age and NaCCRA, the two strongest voices for residents in the United States to enter into a partnership. I like to have dropped my teeth on this where I was sitting. I was so happy to hear that. This has been about 4 or 5 years ago. And we're finally there, and I don't think we should let anything keep two great organizations like this who are both in existence to support the residents from going into written agreement with each other. Thank you, Mr. President.
Amen.
Thank you, Charlie. Okay, any other member of the board have something to say?
Yeah, this is Walt Boyer. I'd like to say that last December 15th, I received an email, one of their standard information emails from Leading Age. And in that email, it indicated that Leading Age had responded to an IRS new proposed regulation. That regulation was going to require charities, 501c3s that received funds to get the Social Security numbers of the people the donors that gave money to them, and report to the IRS on an annual basis. Now, this was to be done on a volunteer basis, but a lot of people feel that's just the first step to making it permanent. And it turns out that neither NaCCRA nor the North Carolina organization was aware of this, mainly because we don't have the resources to keep track of all of the regulations, all the proposed regulations going on in the government at any one time. When the date the IRS put this out was mid-September, I think it was September 15th or close to that, which happened to be the same day that the Office of Personnel Management was hacked and had millions and millions and millions of Social Security numbers released to a hacker. In December, I got a letter from the Office of Personnel Management saying my name and Social Security number was one of them. My premise is that with the resources available to Leading Age, with an agreement, we should be able to be notified about those things much earlier so that we as an organization can respond and make a statement in the time frame. When I received the notice on December 15th, which is the first we found out about it, we had 24 hours to respond to the IRS. That wasn't enough time to get a response put together and approved by either board, either the state board or the NaCCRA board. And so I feel that an affiliation with Leading Age could probably help us in terms of knowing what's going on in the government and being able to ascertain more readily the things that are going on that impact our residents so that we can take advantage and make a case back. Thank you.
Good point.
Thank you, Walt. Anybody else on the board?
Bob Nagel. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes.
Bob Nagel, welcome. Go ahead.
I'm the one fellow that predates Charlie. I started with the in the 2000s. And I just want to say there have been 4 occasions that without the support of Leading Age, we would have had problems. And number 1 was to get a full waiver against the skilled nursing bed tax, which would have cost each resident or each CCRC $11.60 per day of skilled nursing. And with their support, we got a full waiver on that. And Leading Age was absolutely the necessary part of getting that. They had the contacts at the state legislature. We used their attorneys. We used their mailing list, and it worked. Number 2, we worked with the national organization in getting the IRS to change their position on the imputed interest tax, which I don't think we could have done as a NaCCRA by itself. Number 3, I'm resident of Edge Hill, and this problem has not been discussed very much, but we went through the change of ownership in the year 2011 from a 501c3 to private ownership. It involved lawyers, and I really relied upon Steve Mogg and his staff at the national level to help guide the residents' position during the change of ownership. And that took about a full year and a half to accomplish. And I'll say that with their help and guidance, we did get $500,000 from the former owner, Stanford Health System, to be distributed to residents. And number 4, without the aid of Leading Edge, we would have not been successful in getting a NaCCRA Residence Bill of Rights into the laws of the state of Connecticut. So I think those are 4 very significant items in Connecticut's history, and it's work with the local representative of Leading Edge and also the support of the national. And I like the wording that has come in that Gene and Jack worked out. But right now, we should say we're going to work together. Jack and Steve, you get the details. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Good point there. Thank you.
I think the record should show that there's somebody that's older than Charlie Falk. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that
he told when he became a member. I also become a member on 1 January of 2000.
Is that right? All right. Are there any other discussions on this motion?
This is Jack. I think I ought to speak to my own. I want to just say that I really respect Ginger Clifford and Margaret Griffin and others who favor independence. It's very important that there be an independent voice for residents that has the expertise to be able to speak intelligently with the providers. It makes no sense that there is, somebody spoke of dissension among providers toward residents. It makes no sense that an industry has dissension with the people it serves. We need to overcome that. We need to change the provider mentality so that they have respect for the residents and so that the financial protections that the residents need are fully recognized. Now, CalCRA, for example, this past year tried to raise the issue of refund liabilities through the California legislature. It has accounting ramifications, has all sorts of, it's highly technical, but it dramatically impacts residents, and we must work to win the providers to doing the right thing and not just following the advice of their investment bankers who have a different issue from what that might be. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The question here is whether we are better off to have diplomatic relations with the providers or to break diplomatic relations. And I personally think you're better off to stay in communication and try to work together to find common ground. We've heard many voices on this call so far talking about instances where we've succeeded in finding common ground, but there are material issues that go to the heart of this industry that we really need to address, and we're only going to get somewhere if we're able to persuade providers with us. Leading Edge is so huge compared to us, that unless we're able to get them to listen, we won't get anywhere. Met with them in 2010, nothing came of it. What is new with this agreement is that they agree to listen and talk to us. We have not had that before. I think we need it.
Thank you, Jack. I think we're ready to. I think we've heard from everybody that needs to be heard. Is that true? Is there somebody we haven't been heard from? We're going to put the motion then that the board affirms its belief that NaCCRA can better advance its mission by working with the provider organization leading age than it can otherwise. I think on this matter, since it's been contested, I'm going to ask Bill for a roll call vote.
Okay. Is there a seconder?
I second it.
Second.
Okay, the roll call vote. Alphabetical order again. Walt Foyer.
Aye.
Jack Cumming.
Aye.
Jean Hurley.
Aye.
Bob Nagel.
Aye.
Bob Nicholson.
Aye.
Charlie Polk.
Aye.
Bill Ratcliffe, that's me, yes. Jack Snyder.
Aye.
And Peter Robb is not here. Okay,
unanimous.
That's very clearly unanimous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we're ready to move to the next item with appreciation for everyone who contributed, including Ginger. And I hope Ginger heard clearly Jack's Cummings that this is not a dilution. And also the draft agreement has in it a 30-day notice of termination, so that what I think it was David Curtis said, that if there is problems or non-productive relationships, we can terminate it within 30 days. So let's move now to the next item, which is what? Help me out here, folks. Is it
Number 6?
Number 6.
And what is number 6? Because my numbers are different.
Confirmation of an objective from the Dues and Membership Committee.
I thought we did that.
We did that early. That was one of the first things we did.
No, we did not.
Oh, we did not? Okay.
I think the term, Charlie,
We have not touched this.
what we didn't touch is the adjective, yeah. We didn't touch that. This goes...
Okay. Please,
this would be number 5 on your...
That's number 6.
No, I say on Bob Nicholson still got the old agenda for some reason.
That's right, that's why. And Bob is...
So it would be number 6 on yours, Bob.
Number 5 on the original, number 6 on the newest copy.
No. Number 6 on Bob's copy, number 7 on the newest. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confusing everyone. It is 6 on the new...
Yeah, that's right.
Version.
6 on the revised.
Yes.
And what is it on the old one?
Number 5.
Number 5.
Okay, number 5. Confirmation of an advocacy objective from the Dues and Membership. Charlie Polk. Okay, go ahead, Charlie. I'm sorry for being lost.
No problem. During our many hours of deliberations, one of the members, and I believe he's left this meeting already, recommended that we adopt a single, easy-to-understand item to devote our attention to and to advocate for and try to accomplish, and spend time on that. And so after discussion with Bennett and his firm on how much would it cost if we actually got legal help and lobbying help to push this through the U.S. Congress, what would it cost? And he estimated about $100,000. Well, we agreed it was so important that we would do it anyway, and we would push for it individually. And that item that we selected was financial transparency in all aspects of it, to include security of residents who made large refundable entrance fees for the security of those entrance fees. It required a great deal of deliberation, and one of the first things that was supposed to happen, I had a meeting scheduled with Senator Bill Nelson a couple of days after Christmas that got canceled, but I was able to talk with an aide in Washington, and their recommendation at this point in time is to wait until after the election unless it is something earth-shattering. And I said, well, would it help if we just start talking about it to our local representatives and state senators throughout the country? And he said, absolutely, it would help to start talking about it. So we're going to put together all the ramifications of financial security at one of our early meetings after this meeting and send it to the board where you can help us in discussing it with the folks that you meet with and have an opportunity to see that we may not have an opportunity to do. I think it was a great idea, and I wish the person who had recommended it was still here where I could give him an attaboy in front of the board, but he has left the meeting. I don't want to just keep talking to fill up my time, so at this point I'll take any questions you have.
All right, Charlie, this is Bob Nicholson. I need to ask, first, you were saying in talking to Senator Bill Nelson's office that the time to press this is after the election, and that in the interim it would be a time of education, information sharing to build a basis of understanding among our NaCCRA members. Is that what I'm understanding? That's correct.
And if you have an opportunity with your state senators and U.S. senators from your state and representatives from your area where you live, just tell them that we're thinking about asking for federal legislation on this, and give them what information you have on it, and ask them if they would consider supporting it when it does come forward.
Now, let me ask you about the wording of your motion. It seems
I'm not making a motion. I want you to.
Well, I know, but there is a motion in the agenda that I need you to speak to.
Well, I can speak to that.
Wait a minute. I didn't go far enough. I'm sorry, Jack. I didn't realize Go ahead, Jack.
Okay. Well, first, I think Jack Snyder is still on the call. Jack Snyder said we need to have something clear that we're working for, and so we wanted something simple. And I want to make clear that this doesn't merely protect refundable entry fees. This would protect everybody's entry fee investment. Right now, there's nothing to prevent an entry fee from being invested in a speculative undertaking in Mexico, as happened with our providers. So, this would protect all of them. And what it says is that entry fee contracts, those payments, would get the same protection as life annuity contracts have under state laws. This is not really a federal law. It's a federal mandate that the states enact laws, just as the Affordable Care Act directed the NAIC to have the states enact aspects of their Medicaid laws to be uniform. So this is very similar to the mechanism that was used to amend state laws with the Affordable Care Act, except that here what we're saying is that an entry fee should have the same protection as a life annuity contract. To be clear with that, this is the same as what you have with a bank deposit. They're covered by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. Entry fee contracts are now fully at risk, and when an outfit goes bankrupt, the money's just lost, and this would protect those investments that people make. That's what the proposal is about. And it seems simple enough. There's a precedent for it in insurance and in banking, other financial areas. This is a similar financial transaction where you're paying an amount in advance for lifetime protection. That's the analogy with life annuities. It's exactly the same as a life annuity. It ought to have the same protection.
Thank you, Jack.
So why did we go to just this one thing? Why don't we just promote, the model laws concept, which, I can identify with that. But when you come up with just this one thing that you expect the federal legislature to deal with, they're not going to deal with it. You know that. When Senator Cole came out with his report in 2010, he had a list of 3 pages of what the states should do or could do. He had a list of 2 pages of what CCRCs could do. He had nothing that the federal could be done at the federal level. Not one thing. Not one suggestion, not one recommendation. To think that this is just absurd to think that you're going to go to the federal legislature and have them require the states to protect residents' entrance fees in CCRCs. We need an advocacy position, that's right. But let's make our advocacy position the model laws, which makes a lot of sense. I pass it out at every meeting I go to.
Mr. President, can I respond to her, please?
Oh, please do.
Charlie, Paul, I want to comment on some things about Senator Cole that you folks may not know. Because of my relationship with him and the Senate Committee on Aging, he had the GAO to assign me a seat on their committee. And I worked with them throughout this study, and I have to admit, and I take the blame for it, and I realize the ignorance of my ways at this point, but I personally spent a great deal of time talking Senator Cole out of writing a federal bill and asked him to please, let's leave it with the states at this time. And that's why he published some recommendations for the states. He was fully prepared to draft a Senate bill right then to require those things that he recommended. But the advisors of NaCCRA at that time thought it was best to keep all regulations at the state level. And that's why Senator Cole did what he did.
Other comments from the board? There are 2 comments that come to mind. One is Charlie's about the timing that we're talking about after the presidential election, and the other was Bob Nagel's reflection on not being able to get things done that he documented in his 4 points without the partnership of leading age. And I wonder if this is something that we need to keep on the front burner and word the motion in such a way that it will be a part of our collaboration with leading age, and we may disagree on how it goes forward, but to get federal legislation, from what I've heard from Bob Nagel, requires a partnership of providers and residents, and this
I agree with that. Talk it over with this should be on the agenda with leading age before we vote to adopt a position. We need to hear, another position.
This is Jack. We're in touch with them on this exact thing. I've already had correspondence with Katie and Steve on this matter, and that will be continuing.
And what do they have to say?
They're reviewing it.
Well, okay, so they haven't said that they're in favor of it or opposed to it or feel like it needs to be rewarded or anything. No recommendations.
What's your point?
We want to hear their recommendations on pursuing that kind of legislation.
Well, do you feel that it would be desirable to have a fail-safe guarantee for your entry fee investment or not?
I feel like it would be desirable, but I don't feel like we're going about it the right way. I feel like it should come under our model laws, and that our advocacy should be for what is listed in the model laws.
You know, Charlie Parker again, the only federal legislation that NaCCRA has ever had approved and is still on the law books is that return to home law, and it was done absolutely by NaCCRA alone, and at that time when it was done, NaCCRA only had 9 state members and no individual members.
And what was the law?
Return to home bill. If you left your CCRC and went into the hospital, they had to return you to the nursing home in your community or the one that was served your community, and not put you out to a cheaper one.
This is federal legislation?
Yes, it is.
This is when was this passed?
I want to say in 2001, but I might be off a year one way or the other.
Okay, other board members on the motion before us.
Well, Nagel, I like the perspective on Jack's comments. This is an industry problem that in the case of our particular CCRC, we have $124 million that is just a promise to be repaid. And that is a negative in getting residents, elderly people interested in looking at a CCRC, that $124 million is only a paper promise that will be returned to you or your estate, depending on. And I think this is where NaCCRA and Leading Age have to work together. It's an industry problem. It doesn't protect the resident. It says CCRCs are a viable way for retirement people.
Yeah. NaCCRA and
do you have a way of modifying the language to include that in the motion?
Not offhand, but I would let that with Jack, who does a great job in taking the ideas and putting them in a nice solid. I just like the perspective. It's an industry problem. It's not a residential problem. It's a manager and an owner problem also.
Well, this is Jack. A couple of things. Number one, this is part of the model laws. This is what we did was we took out one of the aspects, is one that seemed to resonate the most with residents, and to elevate it. And it's not really federal legislation. It's just like these are built by the state, but they're federally ended. So I
think I'll give off Julian.
But it is an industry problem. I agree with that. It's an industry problem that works to the detriment of residents. So residents would be benefited by this, and the industry would be benefited. So that's why it's a good thing for us to be looking at.
What this motion says is NaCCRA proposes that the Older Americans Act of 1965 be amended, and that I'm dead set against.
Okay. Let's go back to Bob Nagel and get Bob and Jack talking. Could we insert something NaCCRA recognizes this is an industry problem of providers and residents, and that in collaboration with Leading Age, we work toward the Older Americans Act being amended, or something like that.
No, let's leave out the Older Americans Act being amended.
I think that Gene doesn't like using the Older Americans Act as a hook for this. I think we've got a consensus among the board that this would be a good thing if it took place, and therefore we can work forward with conversation. I think that we're just sort of going off into details of implementation, and I think that the discussion has led to a consensus. So the minutes could just reflect that the consensus is that it's a good idea, and how to pursue it is in question.
All right.
And also whether or not to go into this with leading age.
Mr. President, Charles Falk, in relationship to what Jackson's saying, how many of you know the purpose of NaCCRA as first stated? They only had one purpose, and this purpose was a coalition of residents for the preservation of resident capital. That was their stated objective, and that was the title of the organization. It was not NaCCRA, it was a coalition of residents for the preservation of other residents' capital. A young lawyer, I think from Carrollwoods in North Carolina, Stokes, changed the name from Coalition of Residents for the Preservation of Capital to NaCCRA. But what I want to tell you also is I just completed 2 years on a task force in Florida with 3 residents and 3 leading age members, and the president of Leading Age Florida and Mr. Napier as consultants in the Department of Insurance, working on this very issue. And it took us 2 years to get an agreement on the providers in Florida had to pay entrance fees, the entrance fees on a Class A contract. You have 4 months and you can get all of your money back if you don't like what you've moved into. They have to pay that back in 60 days. Long-term entrance fee is where you got a 75, 90, 100% refundable contract. We finally got an agreement that the residents would be paid back in 1 year. And I tell you what, I felt like I was cut up all over because I wanted that to be 60 days also, because I had a large insurance policy at one time, and when I got in a position where I didn't think I needed it, I cashed it in, and within 60 days of when I sent my letter to them, I got my check for $150,000, which was the face value of my insurance policy with some interest thrown in. So it's a tough nut to crack. It's still probably the #1 issue facing residents in the United States, and it's going to require a lot of give and take negotiations to move it.
This is Arthur Stafford from Connecticut.
Mr. President?
Go ahead.
Mr. President?
Frank.
This is Jack.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Nagel again, Connecticut. This was a key point in getting the Residents' Bill of Rights passed in the Connecticut House and Senate, and we had to compromise. We wanted 2 years for protection of the residents for return of their contract amount, and we had to negotiate the owners and you might say some of the other organizations wanted 5 years, and we had to, like Charlie, we finally got an agreement, and the bill passed with 3 years. That is the way an organization works. You do not get all you want, but you do get part of it, and we were pretty happy with that.
Yeah, and in Connecticut, Leading Age and the Residents Association will work together for both the compromise and the bill. And that's important. That's what we need to do at the national level.
How do we get that language, Gene, into the motion that it's an industry problem and important to work with?
Well, the motion is written out, but it has not been. Nobody has really made it verbally, and I suggest that we simply table that written motion and consider it in February after we've had a chance to talk it over with the people from Leading Age.
Okay. Is your motion to table the motion?
My motion is to table the motion.
All right. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that with the condition that Jack and Steve start working on it.
They're already working on it, Walt.
Yeah.
Okay. If they're already working on it, fine.
Well, just to be sure, then
I'll second the motion as is.
All right. Okay. Now the motion is to table. All in favor, say aye.
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 This is Walt Boyer. I wanted to make before we close.
All right, Walt Boyer.
I'm not opposed to tabling it, the motion on the motion itself, but I'm curious to know what the impact would be at various CCRCs around the country. I think if we're going to get this resolved nationally, we're going to end up going to the NAIC and to the Accounting Standards Board.
Yeah, FASB.
We may need the threat of a Congress and a bill in the Congress to get them to take some action. But one of the things I think we need is some examples of what kind of impact it will have on CCRCs of various types around the country. Some CCRCs, I would imagine, it will have relatively low impact on because they're already doing a lot to make that happen. Other CCRCs are lagging, and it's going to be a major pain for them. And that's like around the country. If we go into the NAI, FASB, sure they're going to ask questions. We should be able to answer.
Thank you. Other comments? Are we ready
to go with one more comment? That is, your adversary in this particular situation will be the investment bankers.
Yeah.
So that's why Leading Age and NaCCRA can form a team. It's the investment bankers who will say, we don't want any limit on this. We don't want to impair our indebtedness or the money that we've invested.
Believe it or not, the adversaries in Florida turned out to be the executive directors because that was a kind of a slush fund for them. As they got a refundable interest fee in, they spent it for whatever they wanted to and didn't give a thought that they were going to have to pay it back. So we've never had any problems from investment bankers whatsoever on this, and this lasted for 2 years with a monthly meeting and sometimes twice a month meeting.
Yeah. This is Jack Matheson. I find that entrance fees are usually refundable contingent on the unit being reoccupied. I know someone that has waited 18 months before receiving the entrance fee.
Okay,
it's not uncommon for the retirement center to say return contingent on reoccupation of the unit.
That's right. Thank you, Jack. Now we've tabled the motion and we're running out of time, and we still have several items, and that includes calling on Walt Boyer for communications from, with, and among the state presidents. Walt?
I'll make this very quick. I've been promoting them to be participating in with Charlie after Charlie's invitation. He let me know early that he was going to do that, and And so I felt since that's the week, I'd let them have a couple of with Charlie before we have our first conference together. And although Charlie says he's only had responses from one, my implication is from others from me is that he should get more than that to sign in. But I will check between now and next Monday just to make sure that they're on board. The general consensus is that from the members that they're divided between having meetings, teleconferences on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. I'm going to try to start on a bi-monthly basis, and if we decide that's too often, we'll go to quarterly. But I think inviting them in to listen, board meetings, to participate in some of our more important committee meetings is an important adjunct, and we should continue to do that.
All right. Thank you, Walt. Now, the arrangements, Bill Radcliffe, for the March 11 to 16 meeting at the Wardman Park Marriott in Washington, D.C.
Right. After the last meeting, I sent out, as requested, the information on how to register. And I want to confirm the deadline for registering is the 13th of February. And I checked yesterday with the hotel, and they said they still have only 4 people registered. That's Bob Nicholson, Charlie Falk, Walt Boyer, and Jack Cumming. So if you want to go there, make sure you book before the 13th of February.
Okay.
I would like to add one more thing to that. If you're thinking of trying into, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago about when you can get the best rates for flying, and that article indicated that making your reservations about the best time to make them in order to get the best prices.
Okay. That's a word to those whose names were not read to make your reservations and book your travel to get the best rate. Because after is it the 12th of February, that 13th, that the rate at the hotel goes up?
Yes.
Okay. That's the end of my agenda, and I need to ask if that's the end of your agenda.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 other items.
All right. What are they?
The Lifeline report, website report, staff report, which I guess Bennett has already done.
We're going, all right.
And then
Jean, do you have anything from Lifeline?
Yes, the deadline for submitting articles to Lifeline is the 25th of January. That's a Monday. So I expect the President's message. I have Jack's. I have Jennifer Young's Ask and Share already.
All right.
I sent out a request, as you asked, for these people send in photographs to you.
Yes.
I don't know if you've had much of a response.
Nope, I haven't had any response. I think I have one.
Okay. I'll try
and
again.
This is Kim. The latest edition was mailed the Tuesday and Wednesday before the New Year, so it should be hitting the East Coast as we speak, and it takes about 7 to 10 days to hit the West Coast. What I do ask is that for any of you at your communities that know about anybody's passing, if you could please forward that on to me so we can help keep track of that and put it in the newsletter.
Okay.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Bill.
Yeah.
Now, there was one other thing that what did you say, Bill?
The website report.
Website, and Martha Marks is not on the call. I think I can update you that she is working to streamline the website in 2 ways. One, when the membership committee, Charlie Park's committee, gets to that point, to make the website a 2-tier website. 1 tier would be the information for the public, and the second would be by a password for NaCCRA members. And secondly, she's trying to work with Bennett on a streamlined way to become a member of NaCCRA online. Those are the two things that she's told me that she's working on.
Okay. Good.
So that's the end of the agenda. Do I hear anything else?
Let me make a comment on membership online. The only way you can do that is to have a credit card, and most credit cards for an organization our size is going to want 8 to 12%.
Mr. President, can I comment on that? Because I know what's going on. It's Kim. We are looking at doing it through PayPal, which is considerably less expensive. We do meet the criteria for the cheapest level of service at this point. So it is we're looking at it as an option. It seems to be a good option for right now. It is less expensive than a typical credit card service.
Okay, good. Thank you.
But anyway, it's being explored. And and we hope it will work. So thank you all, and thank you for your consideration. And we'll see you soon. The meeting's adjourned.
Matheson, thanking you, Bob Nichols.